Hello, hello. Welcome to the next installment of the House of Health Longevity Lounge. I'm your host, Leah Steele, and I am super excited to be here today. And I cannot wait for our guest, Jennifer McKinney, to join just shortly. In the meantime, I am going to share. Say hi as you're hopping on so that I know that you are here. We'll be live in just a moment. Oops. Gosh, I thought this was easier. All right. I figured it out yesterday. Okay, I think we're live. Hi.
Hello.
I'm just getting us shared into all the places.
Perfect.
And I think let me just double check. Sure, we are live in House of Health. We are. I did it. My second day in a row. Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to see you.
I'm so excited to see you too. Okay.
You know what it's like? It's
What?
like we've been internet dating for a while, you and me, and it's been a few months, but we haven't we think we're meant to be together, but we haven't met in person. So now it's our first date and everyone's watching. So, it's perfect.
That's exactly what it's like. Okay, I'm going to do a official little intro here and we're going to kick off. So hello, everyone, as you're joining, as you're watching live here on the StreamYard or you're watching in the Facebook group. We're so happy that you are here and that you're joining us live. So welcome to the next installment of the House of Health Longevity Lounge. I am your host, Leah Steele, and I am so excited to be here today to talk about some of my absolute favorite things with a guest who I've recently become internet besties with. She was just actually saying previously that it was like, we've been internet dating for a while and now we actually get to meet each other face to face. I'm so honored to have Miss Jennifer McKinney here with me today. We have so many exciting things to talk about. We have connected over the last several months. And I think really primarily because we're both Maha mamas and I started watching her content and she started watching my content and we kind of started engaging with each other. But we have a lot of the same life values and have both really been on this incredible health journey. Jennifer is a high performance coach. She has lost over 150 pounds. I'm so excited to talk to you about your weight loss journey, Jennifer. And I'm just so incredibly honored that you're here today. I can't wait to have this conversation. I know it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a lot of laughs. But thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm super. I mean, I'm honored as well to be here, Leah. It's like one of those, we see each other across the bar, right? And it's like, wait, is she looking at me? Wait, is she looking at me? And it is. We have so much in common, but we're just on the surface. So this is going to be great to kind of dig into the meat of some of what you and I are both passionate about. So I'm super, super excited to be here.
Amazing. So I'm just going to out the gate. I want to ask you about the viral video.
Okay.
Because I haven't actually heard you tell this story. I've obviously picked up on it just being in your space and in your world and seeing, but I would love to hear the story of the viral video from you because I mean, I was following you prior to this, but I think this is maybe one of the things that really put you on the map.
Yeah, well, I didn't know we were going to talk about it. I would love to talk about it. So the video, let's back up to before the election. I think it was October 17th, and I live in Wisconsin. I have 5 teenagers. Oldest 2 were first-time voters. They're 18 and 19. You'll find out soon enough. I just am passionate about truth and politics and speaking our mind. And we had been to a Trump rally, Leah. He had been to town maybe 2 or 3 weeks earlier. And we went and we saw him. I voted for him the last time as well. And the time before that, I had heard with Kamala running, she would make these jokes like, his rallies are so small, mine are so big. So on October 17th, I found out she was coming to town. And so I grabbed my oldest son. We kind of shifted our schedule. We went to the Kamala rally, kind of just to see what it was all about, feel the vibe. Truly, I wanted to see in the same town, right? Like to like, apples to apples, what was the size like? And honestly, then and even still now, I have a real interest in wanting to try to understand why people were voting for her, because I couldn't figure it out. And I'm like, okay, these people are my neighbors. Like, let's just go. We didn't go to heckle.
Can I just stop you really quickly?
Yeah.
Because this is actually one of the things that I really love and respect about you. And it's something that for me on my platform, especially as I'm sort of entering my hat into the health politics ring, that I find is really important. And my husband feels the same way about this. Like, it's so important, I think, for us to not just be stuck and, you know, like anchored into our own beliefs, and to actually look at what's happening on the opposite side and to try to understand, instead of just being closed-minded. And I think that, you know, the conservative movement gets a really bad rap because the left would have you believe that we're uneducated, that we're not actually going out there and like doing our own research. And so I just have to say, like, I love that you went to a Kamala rally, like from a place of curiosity, like, let me really see, let me really learn. So I just had to say that because, you know, I do think that there is a picture that's painted particularly about conservative women. We'll go into that as well, that we're not strong, that we're not intelligent. We'll go into that a little later. But I love that. And I love that, like, this is how you're raising your children, to really be aware and intellectual, and to be looking, you know, from both sides, to really see, like, hey, what is actually really going on here in our country? Like, having a commitment to actually understanding what the whole entire country is experiencing and going through. So I wanted to say that.
I'm glad you said that, right? Because we aren't what media or the left would tell you that we are, right? And so I think it's important. I was telling my girlfriends, I have a group of girlfriends, we have a text thread about, you know, about you and about joining you tonight / this morning. And I was like, she's gorgeous, she's funny, but she's so smart. You guys would love her. And that's the thing. My friends are so smart. Like, I've got friends way smarter than me. And so I do want to be someone who, and I want to love people too, right? I really do. I want to understand, not from a point so I necessarily can try to prove you wrong. It blew my mind. And so, and I wanted my kids also to be like, no, it's not like you're going to go to the polls and I'm going to say, okay, fill in that circle, fill in Donald Trump. You know, one of my sons even said, what if I wanted to vote for Kamala? And I think he was trying to be funny. And I was like, great question. You know, why would you want to? And he was like, oh, Mom, I was just kidding. I know Donald Trump is, you know, so I want them to have their own opinions. And I'm glad you called that out. So we went there, and this guy comes out on stage first. No idea who he is. They introduced him as Mark Cuban. And I'm like, oh, I think I recognize the name. Real nice suit, you know, making all these Trump jokes. And of course, people are like, oh, he's the Shark Tank guy and he's this and that. And I think this was pre, you know, his quote that we'll get into. And, you know, we were there for many hours. I wanted to see her speak, but the vibe was weird. It was very different. I won't say that the people themselves weren't welcoming. I had some really nice conversations with 2 college girls and then a married gentleman who was there, who was a vet. And he used to be a Republican, and he said he married someone who was voting for Kamala. So he was figuring it out. Great conversations. But, you know, the vibe was not like joyful or fun, which is how I like to be. That's cool. It doesn't have to be. So Mark Cuban gets done. We wait. They bring out the vice presidential seal and they Velcro it to the podium. And I'm like, this is it, right? So Kamala came out. So let me get to the point of the video. I wasn't videoing Leah. Again, I was saying before, that we weren't wearing Trump gear. We didn't go to heckle. That was none of our intention. It was truly me and my son, and we just wanted to experience it. We actually didn't want to stand out as people who probably had some different beliefs. Not at all. So she comes out and she's speaking, and of course there's so many jokes about this and that and Trump, and I'm hoping to hear her speak about her policy. She doesn't. And then the topic of abortion came up. And she started talking about Roe v. Wade and how it was overturned and people are, you know, booing. And she's talking about we need to go back and freedom and babies and rights and women. And of course, as a believer and someone who's very pro-life, to hear them cheering for women's rights, I knew exactly what they were talking about. Women have rights in this country. They use that right to talk about abortion and to say that abortion is a woman's right. It's not. A woman's rights end at the exact moment they intersect someone else's rights. So all this to say, I stepped away a little bit because I didn't love the feeling. And I grabbed my phone. I didn't go live. I just made a video. First, only 20 seconds I videoed the entire time, just to kind of capture my thoughts. So I held up my phone and Kamala was behind me and I said, you guys, okay, I'm at this Kamala rally. I'll tell you about it later. But she was just speaking about abortion. And I'll tell you what, the vibe of this crowd has been morose and calm and like just kind of dark. And the entire crowd just cheered for the first time in, I think, 7 hours for a woman's right to choose and abortion and getting Roe v. Wade, instated again. And I said, you know what? Anyway, I said, take a peek. And so I turned the phone towards Kamala. And I also kind of wanted to show the crowd. It was significantly smaller. I'm not a math girl, but probably a tenth as small. And at that moment, how could I have ever imagined? I hear this voice shouting from the crowd, Jesus is Lord. I mean, we all heard it. It's a half of a gymnasium. And then I'm still recording. And then Kamala says what probably most of you have heard now. She says, I think you're at the wrong rally. And then she goes on to say, I think you meant to go to the smaller one down the street, which at this point now I have proven that it's not smaller. And that was it. I stopped recording. My son's face was white. I was physically ill. They're cheering for abortion. And then someone says our Lord's name. And her knee-jerk reaction is to say, you don't belong here. So they get kicked out. I have no idea who they are. My son and I left. And as I'm walking home, I'm texting this group of girlfriends I have. And I'm like, they knew I was there at the rally. I'm like, you're not going to believe what just happened. And so I knew within the next couple minutes that I had to share that. No idea it would go as viral as it did. But I thought, believers, especially Leah, like they need to hear what just came out of this candidate, this vice president who wants to be president's mouth, not only about abortion, but about somebody who shouted out our Lord's name. And so the rest, as they say, is history. I posted it and it went crazy.
Yeah. So thanks for sharing that. And I'm kind of laughing because I'm sitting here and I'm watching the numbers go down on the live stream, right? Like as we bring up this topic. And I wanted to start with this very intentionally because I am a person that was very, very pro-choice my whole entire life. I was raised by a mother who was pro-choice. I was pro-choice my whole entire life. And I made some decisions in my youth based upon my beliefs that I deeply regret. Now, having said that, I personally am pro-choice. I have some beliefs about this topic that I'm actually going to be sharing in a later podcast when I actually talk about, and maybe I'll have you back on to chat about this, but talking about Planned Parenthood and the original intentions behind the founding of that organization and the original intentions around synthetic birth control, which is something that I think is really, really important that we discuss from a health and longevity perspective.
Yes, right. Even forget morality. Completely. We can still talk about health. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of segue into this. Here's the thing. I am no longer at a place in my life where I am afraid of sharing my politics. I built a very large multi-7-figure coaching business in the online space. And I used to be very reserved about what I shared because I was afraid that I was going to lose clients or customers or followers. The beauty of me taking a step back and stopping coaching for several years has been that I no longer have those fears. And with everything that's happening in the world, I think probably much like you, I'm in a place where I just feel like I can no longer be silent about my views. I have definitely been a conservative woman for a very long time, but even over the last couple of years, from a morals and values perspective, I have anchored more and more into conservative values. Now, I absolutely believe that it is the state's right to choose the types of people that they want to have in their communities. And I believe that abortion rights, and yes, I absolutely 100% agree with you on this. Like, let's call it what it is. Because the reality is it is not reproductive rights, it's abortion rights. This is a serious topic. And it is very heated for a reason. And I think that we should stop trying to sugarcoat it. We should actually just call it what it is, which is abortion rights. I believe that they belong with the state. And I believe that the states have the right to choose what they want that to be. And then if you don't want to live in that community, that type of community, then you go to a community where you're free to choose these types of rights. So as far as all of that goes, I don't want to go too deep into this because we could actually go in and
this wasn't even one of our topics, right?
Right. We could debunk this wasn't one of our topics, by the way, but I had to ask you about the viral video. Like, I had to ask you about that because I do believe that topic, like this wasn't even a valid policy point in the election.
Right. Because it really wasn't even like being voted on. Even earlier, I think today or yesterday, I had someone who was like, why did you vote against women's rights? And I'm like, well, first of all, I didn't. And second of all, I didn't, like this isn't even, I totally love the idea of choice. I think that's what a lot of conservative women stand for. And we get this, reputation that we're about controlling people or taking away rights. And it's like, no, we actually believe that you should get those rights as a sovereign human. And we love that the state now has the right at that level to talk about abortion. But also it wasn't on the ballot, So it was just fascinating how polarizing it was, considering that really wasn't even like, she's not going to be able to overturn Roe v. Wade,
Right.
Not in the near future.
For me, I feel like this is all very intertwined, and it's all very intertwined with health. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of gaslighting that goes on around reproductive rights. And there is an agenda that is being pushed to get women bought into the idea that they need to be on synthetic birth control when it is actually population control, and it is designed for sterilization. It is designed to get us to a place where we are not actually able to have reproductive rights because rights are taken away from us.
But you back that up to not only to be on that, but also to back up to that we should believe whatever the doctors and the elite experts tell us because they tell us it's safe. So you back that up to what our parents were told about our vaccines and now the well-child visits that we bring our kids to and so when we believe them and we don't, then we willingly did with the COVID shot, and we willingly trade, reproductive empowerment with, we equate it with abortion. So it goes deeper to like just this, I don't want to say blind, but this trust that once you realize there isn't a real good reason to have that trust, you're like, wait a second, I can't trust. They're actually trying to sterilize me and kill, right? You go back to Planned Parenthood, kill Black people. It blows your mind when you realize what's really going on.
And that statement in and of itself, like that Planned Parenthood was designed to kill Black people is I get that this is a very controversial topic, but the reality is that the facts are there.
Exactly.
And so this is why this is going to be I'm going to do a full breakdown of this on my podcast in moving forward. So this is actually a great segue for us into the Maha movement, because, I think we have this idea that conservative women are uneducated. They are, that they don't do research, that for some, I think that the liberal view of conservative women is that they are under the thumbs of their husbands who are basically just telling them what to do. They're just agreeing with whatever their capitalist right-wing husbands are telling them that they should believe, right? When in fact, what I have found is the exact opposite, that conservative women are actually highly intelligent. And the thing that they are most interested in is the health and safety of their families and their children. And as a result of that, they are willing to ask difficult questions and they are willing to dive deeply into issues that the left is, on the flip side, kind of willing to just accept the science, willing to just accept what the doctor tells them. And that has been my experience across the board. So I would love to just hear from you, because I don't know your,
we haven't talked about this.
No. So I know that you have this is really important to you, but I would love to hear like a little bit about your journey. Like, have you always been in this place? As far as from a medical perspective and a health perspective, is that something that, you've always had awareness on? Was there a moment that you started saying, oh, wow, like we're being brainwashed, we're being poisoned? Tell me a little bit about your journey in this movement.
Yeah, I would love to. And again, what you're saying about moms, right? There's something about mothers. And Lord love men, right? But they won't ever understand what it's like to actually be a mom and to have that mama bear instinct. And so I think you're absolutely right. This Maha movement didn't come recently. It didn't even just come with RFK starting to speak out. It was born a long time ago in the hearts of moms who really love our kids. And here's how it happened for me, Leah. I will tell you. I grew up, my mom got us vaccinations, you know, the whole 9 yards, but she was also kind of hippie and alternative. I can remember having bee pollen as a snack in a little bag in the refrigerator, and she mixed orange juice with nutritional yeast and ground up vitamins. So I had that, but also very much you listen to the doctor, right? So I listened to the doctor, and I have 5 teenagers. And when my first was born, when I was pregnant with him, and I'd always push the envelope a little personality wise. I'm an artist. I like to, you know, kind of be sort of out there, but I'm a firstborn. I followed the rules. So I'm pregnant with my first, and I went to the Bradley method class because I thought, well, I don't mind having an epidural, but I'm sure it's better to do things the natural way. It was close. It was in my neighborhood. Here I am. And it was a few weeks in when our instructor had us we could pick from a list, our choice of topics, and kind of argue our perspective on it. I don't remember the other topics, but one was why I'm going to choose circumcision for my son. Well, we knew that our child was a boy. And so actually I was tired in my pregnancy because you get tired, and I'm like, I don't want to have to research. I'm going to pick why I'm going to circumcise. This will be an easy one to research and argue. Well, guess what? I started to research it, and I had my paper ready for all these reasons because I really wasn't sure why I was like, wait, why am I? But you know, it's better, like it's healthier. I don't know. I mean, I'd never been asked. And I truly went to write this paper on why I was going to circumcise my son. And it didn't take but a day or two before not only was I realizing I was not writing that paper, I was not circumcising my son, and his dad was on board. We are now divorced. We have all these 5 kids together, and we could not, with honest, true hearts, look at the research, find a reason other than it's just what everyone else does. And that was not a good enough reason for us to essentially, to mutilate our son's genitalia. So then you started thinking about, this, am I just listening to other people or listening to what the world says? Well, that snowballs. Okay, well, what about this? What about this vaccine they're going to give him at birth? What about that eye goop? What is that? Is that Vaseline? Oh, it's an antibiotic just in case you have that. Well, do I have that? Well, no. Well, does he need it? Well, no. Well, what about this vaccine? I wasn't planning on not vaccinating him. And I'm like, wait, how do you catch it? Well, it's sexually transmitted and through diseases. I literally said, well, why would a newborn need it? And the doctor said, well, we just find it easier to just get it all done when they're newborns and then it's all taken care of. So this 6-pound newborn, and I just, no. And that it wasn't like it was all done at that point, but it was a big awakening where I was like, whoa, these people are doing stuff because it's just easier. I wasn't thinking about the money at that point. It's just because it's what we've always done. I'm going to actually look at my child and my conscience and my heart and do what's best for him. So he's intact and not vaccinated, and how it started.
That is so wild because this is like, you could be telling my story.
Really?
When I got pregnant with my first son and I had a whole host of health things. So I already had I was already developing a mistrust in Western medicine.
Okay,
I guess.
Got it. Yep.
Only personal health stuff. But I got pregnant with my first son, and I split up with his father when I was 5 months pregnant. Okay. And so there were a lot of this stuff was like stuff that I was having. These were decisions I had to make on my own. Mm-hmm. And this issue of circumcision was raised. And so I literally went to all of my male friends. Because I'm like, this is a huge decision.
Yes.
You have to make a decision. You're making a decision for your son.
Yes.
So I went to all of my male friends and I asked them, should I circumcise or should I not? The answers were so polarizing. Like, I can't even explain to you. Some men being like, you have to. If you don't, he's never going to get a blowjob. He's never going to get a hot chick. And then on the other side,
he's be made fun of in the locker room.
Yeah, he's going to be made fun of in the locker room. And on the other side, I've got male friends telling me, absolutely do not do it. It's genital mutilation. So I was in this place where I was like, so I'm a single mom in a highly stressed, high risk pregnancy. I've split up with my son's father. I'm having to make these decisions about what I'm going to do. I'm literally so stressed because I'm like, this decision that I'm making, like, am I going to prevent my son from ever getting a blowjob his whole entire life? Or am I going to, am I going to circumcise him and then take away his potential to like experience sexual pleasure? I mean, like, this was a lot for me. And so I went down just what you're saying. I was like, okay, I clearly have to do my own research because the external feedback that I was getting wasn't making me feel confident. And so I started researching it and was horrified in what I found. And I was like, absolutely, I'm not circumcising him. I mean, like, and then that led to me, and I told a story in like 2 sessions ago when I told my personal health story. I talked about how I was working with a celebrity OBGYN in Los Angeles who referred me to a celebrity pediatrician who was anti-vax that basically handed me 10 books and said, go read these during your pregnancy. And if you choose not to vaccinate, you can join my practice. So there was this circumcision piece. And then I was on bed rest for the majority of that pregnancy. I literally read all these books and had my mind blown. So it's crazy. I'm like, wow, is circumcision the gateway drug to like,
right. And and there's some women, there are going to be women watching right now who are like, I wish I wouldn't have circumcised because they did it. I have a friend who's very against it. And her husband just said, absolutely not. I know a girl who said I would divorce him if he said I couldn't, if we had to circumcise. So it is polarizing and still it's okay if that's what you ended up choosing because it's done. Right. But it is like a turning point, whether you ended up, going with what you thought was your gut or whatever it is. I think it is a gateway drug and you just start to question it. And the other thing is, it's reversible. The decision not to circumcise is reversible, but the decision to circumcise isn't. What guy's going to want to go? Well, no, they're not. And that's actually kind of the point. If a grown man doesn't want to go get his foreskin cut off, then why would I cut it off for him? But it still is. And not like we're going to go down this all too. But again, it's just back to like these reasons of, well, UTIs are like blah, blah, blah. Women get UTIs way more than men. And sure, I bet it probably does help if you cut it off. But you were going to circumcise our girls too. It's a ridiculous idea, but it's a firmly held tradition that has no basis. And it's not a religious thing for me. And so it was out the door. And once that door was open, well, what else needed to go out there that, and so then it became a 1-by-1 decision. It really does sound very similar.
Yeah. So, it's for me, like that skepticism around, well, just the way that I educated myself around vaccines, it's like now we have people saying, watch Vaxxed. And I'm like, that was me 20 years ago.
Yes.
Like, I mean?
Yes.
Like what, and then I just had the absolute like gift of finding medical professionals along the way who were really educated in these things, but it wasn't because they just dropped in my lap. I sought them out. So, my children went to naturopaths, they went to chiropractors. And the more that I engaged with these types of medical professionals, the more educated I became on these topics because they would have like a private seminar that they went to that they'd share slides with me, or they'd share a recording with me, or they like literally would share like a cassette tape or like a CD, that I would listen to. And so this has been like this ongoing thing for me. So when this Maha movement started, and this is fascinating because this has been just a part of my life, right? And it's been something that I didn't actually talk about a lot. Like my closest friends know, right? But we left the United States for lots of different reasons. There was a lot of stuff happening from a lot having to do with race and we didn't like where the left was taking the race issue. And my oldest biological son is Black. And I was like, I'm not going to raise him in this environment where he is being programmed that he is oppressed and that, I'm like, affirmative action is BS. Like he's not oppressed. He's not marginalized. And I didn't want to raise him like that. So it was a big part of the decision to leave the United States. And I left the United States in a place where I was just really disgruntled and really unhappy with like where America was going. And I think for me, this Maha movement has been something that I have been so excited about because it's like, I can get behind it. And now it's like, brings me back to a place where I'm proud to be an American, where like, I'm proud to actually show up as a patriot, where I actually believe that we can actually affect and have some real change in how we're living and not be poisoned. my perspective, because I've been out of the country for 6 years and I see things from the outside looking in instead of the inside, like in all of the programming and conditioning. And I'm talking with and interacting with people from all over the world. And I'm watching news sources that are outside the United States, is that I think so many Americans just actually have no idea how bad it is. So I'm excited about this because it's actually brought me to a place where I can be like, yes, you know, we're actually talking about looking for property in the United States and spending more time back in the United States. We won't be there full time, but spending this movement has been something I think that has really ignited hope in a lot of people. So I'm interested to hear from you, your thoughts on Bobby Kennedy. And, you know, I'm sure like me, you've been following Bobby Kennedy for a long time because he's really been the only person that's been willing to be as vocal as he's been, that's in the public eye. So I would love to just hear your thoughts on the Maha movement, on Bobby Kennedy, on, you know, some of these other cabinet picks from Trump in relation to FDA, CDC, because I know we've been having some of these conversations, and like what you really see for the future of the United States when it comes to health, wellness, and cleaning up our food supply and helping us get more medical transparency so we can actually make informed medical consent.
Right. And so, you know, I want to circle back as I answer this to you saying you had these, you were able to locate these providers, whether they be naturopaths or chiropractors, who were able to kind of educate you, right? Where I live is a much smaller area and we just didn't have that. And maybe there were some but I did not have connections to them. And so there was a lot of, now that I connect with my girlfriends now, looking back to when we were little, as we were islands, like I actually learned how to medically advocate and research for myself, not because I had a doctor who was willing to see me or even only see me if I wouldn't vaccinate my kids, but one who said, I don't want to see you if you're against vaccines. And so I actually had to learn how to stand up and use my voice. And I was able to do that because I think that's part of who God made me to be. But I think so many women, they just didn't have that in them. And so they just listened, felt it in my gut. But it wasn't until now that I think it's okay to think that. So I think what I feel now is it's becoming less fringe. Okay, yes, people still think that Bobby Kennedy is fringe. And when I went to see him in person the first time in August, he was Tucker Carlson's guest. I mean, of course we knew who he was and I knew he'd spoken out and I was like, he's awesome. But also he's kind of weird. Like he said some really kind of fringe things. Hearing him and then putting it into this, like, it's starting to become what some of my regular friends who vaccinated their kids are saying, that actually makes sense. That checks out. Having been through COVID like we all were, Leah, this actually put people in a really have this fertile ground for being willing to say, maybe my instinct as a mom and what I was told by the doctors and what society said, you know, I should feed my kids really isn't. So I'm excited for it. Let's say Trump wouldn't have won. Still, the responsibility is on me as my kid's mom and me as a sovereign human and a child of Christ, right, to make those decisions. But what I'm excited about is being able to not have to go in the back alley and pass breast milk or raw milk, you know, cow's milk, or get these things. It's actually like, this isn't weird. It's how God made us. It's how so many cultures, I travel a lot. I have villages in East Africa. You and I haven't even talked about that, where, I mean, they wouldn't know, you know, red 40 if it, you know, that would blow their mind to think of eating something like that. They feed their babies with their breast and they grow food in the ground. And it's like, wow, we're getting back to, I think, an awareness of treating our bodies the way that God created them to be treated. And then as far as, you know, these cabinet picks, right? Trump's first time around, I'm not the smartest girl with all this stuff, but he was still new in politics, which is one of the things I think Americans like about him. He's not a politician. And he had different advice from different people in his ear about who to put in his cabinet. This time he's been around the block a little bit. And also I think he's like you and me, where how you've become and how I am. It's like, we're going to say what we think. We're not here to try to just make friends. We're going to say it. But guess what? That approach got him more than half the country's votes. That approach gets me lots of followers and haters, and you even more so, because I think there's something attractive about that. And so he's putting these picks in there where it's like, okay, you know, I think we're going to see, and we'll see resistance, you know, and that's okay. And we need to, I think, be patient and loving with people because we were on our own journey. as long, we hope that they're patient and loving with us, but man, I'm excited to not have to be going against the grain and to really be like, we might, as a collective whole, as a country, really want to put our kids first. RFK said that in one of his speeches, right? You need to love your kids, right? Even more than whatever the next thing is. And moms, we usually do.
Yeah, I mean, that to me, when he said that, and I think that like, this is really what shifted. If I were to say, because we know from a empirical data perspective, it was the mothers.
Yes,
that won the
right.
So we know that. And a lot of that, I believe, actually had to do with Bobby Kennedy. And this thing that he said, we have to love our children more than we hate each other.
Oh yeah, that's what it was. More than we hate each other.
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, I get chills like even that now, because I'm like, if it's not for our children and our future generations, what is it for? And we are poisoning and killing our children.
Yes, exactly. Right.
And so I think that like this, that is what I think sparked or ignited the flame that actually fully converted this election for Donald Trump.
Yep.
And for me, like, we don't undo this in 4 years. We don't, make all these leaps and bounds and all of a sudden America's a healthy nation in 4 years.
Yep.
That's not going to happen. But what I'm most hopeful for, and maybe you agree with this, is like a lot of us were afraid to speak. A lot of women were afraid to speak up. A lot of women. So if all this does is enable moms to actually advocate for their children and follow their own intuition and do what they feel is right and be like, no, I want the information.
Yes.
I want you to prove to me that this is safe for my child. I want to be able to ask these questions of my medical providers without being gaslit and shamed and made to feel like there's something wrong with me and I'm a bad mom for simply asking questions about what you're injecting into my baby. So if only that changes and moms actually feel empowered to stand up for their children, I think that that's going to dramatically shift our society.
Yes. Oh, I love that, right? Because this change doesn't come from the top down anyway, right? And let's say not a single policy changes and none of these cabinet people get, affirmed. Let's just say, which is not happening. Nothing. Absolutely. You are absolutely right. That is, and so talk about the strength of intelligent women and women who love our children. It's what I see in the villages in Kenya. I mean, it is these women who know they have the power to do what needs to be done, because if not for them, there is not always anyone else.
Yeah, I just, clearly I'm really passionate about this. I guess another part of my story that I should share just so that you're aware and the audience is aware is that, I didn't have it. It wasn't that easy for me. So I made the decision not to vaccinate. I didn't do the ointment in the eyes. I didn't do the K1. I didn't do the hepatitis B vaccine because I wasn't a drug IV using prostitute.
Right.
But I didn't do any of that. But then I moved home to Utah. Okay. When my son was a month old, I moved home to Utah. And Utah was not as liberal minded as California was, right? So it was very difficult. And I found a pediatrician that let me, and I ended up vaccinating. My oldest biological son was completely vaccinated up till age 5 on a extended schedule. And it was because every time I went to the doctor, I would leave bawling because they were making me feel so bad. And I knew inside me that I was making the wrong choice. Like I knew that my instincts were correct and I shouldn't be vaccinating him. But every time I went there, they would hammer me.
And they went to medical school, right? Like they have this doctor before their name. It's this thing. And you're just like, and you don't know like how, and so yes.
Yeah. So I did a very, he let me do this and was supportive of me doing this very like long drawn out. He never got like more than 2 vaccines at a time, but he did end up in the children's hospital after having vaccines. And he did end up with RSV and he did end up with severe respiratory illness. And so once he was 5, it was like, I was like, no, like I'm not. And I was a single mom at the time, right?
You didn't have other kids yet at this point.
No, and I didn't have a partner that could be there and like be supporting me. You know what I mean? Through this process. Well, then I got married And my husband had a son from a previous relationship, and he had been fully vaccinated, and we got together, and then he had to have his like middle school vaccines. And so he had his middle school vaccines and had like, there were massive personality changes after those vaccines. We were like
middle school. So it's not even like he was a baby or a toddler.
Yep. And we were like, my husband and I were like, that's it. No, not another vaccine in our children. And then I had the support of my partner, right? I had the support of my husband. And so by the time we had Jack, our youngest son, we were like, nope, no circumcision, no vaccine, but I had that partner. And so when we would go in, you know, like I'll never forget the day I went to have, like we were interviewing pediatricians because we were interviewing OBGYNs because my OBGYN decided he wasn't going to deliver babies anymore. So I had to go find a new OBGYN. And we're in there and this OBGYN is trying to give me a flu shot. And I'm like 2 months pregnant. And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, it literally says on the insert of this vaccine that you're trying to give me that it's not recommended for pregnant women. And she's like, and I'm like, can you explain to me why you would want to inject a pregnant woman with a vaccine that literally in the insert says that you shouldn't do that? She hadn't read the insert. She was like, it doesn't say that. I was like, get me the insert. She was like, no. And I'm like, get me the insert of the vaccine. So she brings it out and we go through this whole thing. And my husband is like, you know, then I've got this advocate and in there, he's just like, nope, we're done. And you're not delivering our baby. And it's like, then I had
interview is over.
Yeah. Interview was over. I had the support though, then, you know, and so then going and making those decisions and being in Utah became so much easier. And it was just like, no, we're not doing this. And no, like we will not have this baby if you choose to do this. And it was really great because I actually had a childhood friend of mine who was a nurse, delivered my baby at LDS Hospital, which was originally started and run by the Mormon Church. Yep. And she's an atheist, a nurse, completely liberal, pro-vaccine. And it was like, she was like, Leah, like, I'm letting you know I'm all of these things. And my recommendation is that you do everything that the hospital recommends. But I will, if your wish is to not do that, I will do everything in my power. And she was a charge nurse, everything in my power to do exactly what you want. And so we had, even in that, like, we don't see eye to eye. We're still great friends. We were able to come together and respect each other's views. And that's really what I want for America. And I think that that's
right. Because at the end of the day, we really are kind of all pro-choice. We want to be able to make our own choices. And guess what? We can support someone else even as they're making different choices as a human to human. So that is a wonderful story that she was able to say, I support you and your choice.
So here's my question, because I think like, again, the narrative around conservative women, just fascinates me because I'm like, it's all lies. Yep. But I want to know, like, because my experience of conservative women is that none of us are trying to put our views on other people. We're not saying you have to think the same way we do. We're just saying to think the way we do. My experience on the other side is that that is not the case. So from a liberal left-wing perspective, I get more hate. I get more name calling. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, I'm curious your position on that or your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So one of the things that I say to the women I coach, and as you mentioned, I'm a high performance coach, weight loss, mindset, health, a lot of things, is, and this really applies in relationships, but also as you looked at left and right and in our culture, when what someone says doesn't line up with what they do, you believe what they do every time. And there's this historical narrative that liberals are the more tolerant, peace-loving, accepting, kind of loving group. And there's this historical narrative that, the right are more snobbish or like we're focused on wealth or we're stupid, we're hillbillies, and that, we just want everyone to do things our way. And the interesting thing is, if you were to just, take the lid off of both of those and just use your experience, and this is not, I'm not going to paint everyone with the same brush, but my experience, and I have a lot of it because before even being on Instagram, I had a blog that was very widely read. I talked to a lot of people. The people with the most visceral reaction against things that I was saying I personally believed were typically liberals. And the people who were more loving and saying, hey, I'm here for you. I love you. You know, I'm not going to judge you. We're more conservative. Now, there is all sorts of, you know, mixing in between, but I am really tired of the narrative, especially now that we've seen that Kamala lost and Trump won, and there's just hissy fits and hateful. I had someone tell me, I hope you don't vaccinate your kids. I hope your children catch fatal measles and mumps and rubella all at one time. Like, he wished death on my children, right? And so I do think, here's what I want to say, and I'll toss it back to you. There's this core, though, as humans, even if we have different beliefs about our faith, certainly about the president we voted for, and there's this element of truth. And I think the veil is covering a lot of eyes that prevents people from seeing it. I think that's a big thing. But there's this core that's like, at the end of the day, we're humans, and then especially as mothers, we're mothers. And so if we can kind of connect on that level, I think we have more in common. And that is what I want for our country too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think that's that to me is, we do have more in common than what we have different. And if we can come back to a place of respect, I think this is just like, then we rebuild a nation essentially. Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting because like, I've always been really interested in politics. So my ancestor is Josiah Bartlett, who was the second signer of the Declaration of Independence. And my grandparents were, you know, patriots. And my grandfather was incredibly, incredibly proud of his heritage and that lineage. And my grandparents' families, you know, on my mother's side were both first colonizers and generals and founders of, you know, different cities as America was being founded. And so I've always kind of had this like little political part of me. But again, I lived in a red state. So I lived in Utah, but all of my friends were liberal. So it was very difficult for me to actually express my views. And so I mostly just kept them to myself or within my family. I also was raised by a mom who completely rebelled against her Republican parents and became a across the line card carrying Democrat hippie, like, you know what I mean? So, and then I, of course, was like rebelled from that. So I went way more towards my conservative views. And then I entered into the online space and like, just felt like I had to be careful about my views, you know, and my views have always been different. I'm a multiracial woman. I'm Black, I'm Native American. My mom is white. And, you know, I've always had very different views. I've always really been able to see through the programming and like false oppression of Black people. So that's always been different. Like, I just have never really been accepted. And I feel like for the first time, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can actually speak my mind. And yes, like I get crucified by certain people, but it feels like now is the time where we actually all can start to share and maybe feel some safety in that. And at the very least, know that there are actually other people out there who are being vocal and are willing to share. And so we're not alone in it.
Right.
Which I think
and people who even think that, you know, when kids are little, babies are little, and all you ever hear is, oh, it's going to be great. They're newborns. They're squeaky. It's adorable. And then you have a baby and you're like, oh my goodness. But nobody ever said it's going to be so hard. When nobody says, I question vaccines too. And before the internet, right? You just don't know. You really think maybe it's only you. I think one thing that people like you and I who are vocal do for the people who just aren't ready or they don't have that kind of desire to be all out there is it makes them feel not alone and not weird. And they're like, okay, that makes sense. I don't actually know Leah, but I resonate with those thoughts, and it validates that, right? I think that's an important thing, that with all the negatives that, you know, the internet and social media get, that are some of the huge, huge positives, is that we can actually help be the voice for people who, you know, didn't quite think of it that way. But yeah, I think that is why I had a check in my spirit when I went to that, you know, or my goodness, my son talking and walking after his vaccine. It's like they can kind of feel not so alone. And isn't that what God made us for, is for community anyway?
So I want to talk to you about your weight loss journey and your personal health journey and how that's kind of transitioned into your coaching. But have the Mark Cuban conversation.
Let's just do it.
Okay. So obviously you go to this Kamala rally, you see Mark Cuban speak. You don't really know who he is. I know who he is because I have kids in sports and like kind of
right. And my son knew. He was like, oh, he owns the, you know, Dallas. And I'm like, again, I mean, I just, you know, I did know once, but yeah, right. It's Mark Cuban.
So you see Mark Cuban speak, then Mark Cuban comes out and he makes his flawed
infamous, famous statement. I've always liked to listen to what people are saying. And of course, I was dialed in now on him because he had spoke at that rally. And the one thing I remembered him doing at the rally specifically, they talk about how Trump is always just being negative. Well, he kind of led everyone in this chant about how Trump was going to be the Grinch who stole Christmas. And he even said something like, if Trump becomes president, you're not going to have enough money for Christmas gifts for your family. And it was like really very dramatic stuff, right? And then it was like, Trump is the Grinch who, what? Stole Christmas. The Trump who stole Christmas. And so I just was like, it felt, first of all, like I was in second grade. And then second of all, like just whatever, not respectful. Not that Trump is always speaking with the highest of respect. So I noticed that. So as of course I'm social media putting this up, and then I'm like, tag. So he's on my radar. And I've always liked to hear what people say. I went to the Kamala rally, right? So I'm trying to see. And then, yep, sure, right as rain, this clip comes up where he ends up saying, he's talking about Nikki Haley, I think, and he says this clip that, you know what you never see? You never see around Trump, you never see smart, strong, intelligent women. Never see it. And I was like, did you really just say that? For all the people who try to tell Trump that he's a misogynist, but you can't really finger point it. I'm like, that really sounded misogynistic. So I ended up just like it was personal because I'm a woman and I'm actually strong and intelligent.
Yeah. I mean, we all reposted it, right? Like,
of course.
Every conservative woman, of course, was like, oh, really? Really, Mark?
Really? Right? And so it kind of became this thing. And okay, I will let you in on a little secret. He and I we have had some communication and some conversation. And I was hoping, and I still do hope, it hasn't happened yet, that he may say, gosh, that's just not really what I meant. But sometimes these talking points that both sides can use, but that, the left wants to say, conservative women are, I'm like, dude, here we are. Look at Trump's cabinet. I mean, you can't say that. And I just think we have to be careful, Leah, right? Here he is, this millionaire, billionaire, owns sports teams, famous on TV, and everyone except me, knew who he was. And I think for as powerful as his words were, they still didn't quite carry enough weight because we hear that now and we are like, that isn't true. I see smart, strong, intelligent, and I did add beautiful, like, dude, just look, I'm just saying, we're beautiful. Women around conservatives, and around Trump, and also just, again, the lies that we hear and calling them out. So he's my favorite little liberal talking head to pick on. And I think sometimes they're in their own echo chamber. Yeah. And I know I'm guilty of it too, right? But if you don't step out and really take the time to be like, gosh, you're strong and intelligent. You supported Trump. I didn't really mean that, but sometimes people just aren't willing to do it yet. So
well, I think this is like another thing that like solidified my like I really like this woman. Like I want to be friends with her. I wake up one day, I come down, I'm getting my coffee and my husband goes, guess who reached out to Jennifer McKinney? And I'm like,
your husband knew first.
Yeah. And I'm like, who? And he's like, Mark Cuban. And I'm like, no way. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, so I'm making my coffee and I'm messaging you. And I'm like, you had already messaged me. You had sent me a message. And so I'm like returning your message and I'm like, okay. And so then like, we're going through this thing, but I had so much respect for you through this because you're having a dialogue and a conversation, and how fascinating, right? That like, you're the person that he chooses to reach out to. Your ability to just kind of keep this like a real heart of compassion for him, I feel like.
At the end of the day, guess what? He's still a person. And I think it humanized him to me too, right? We look at these people on TV and they're like, oh, it's Mark Cuban, it's Kamala, oh, it's Oprah. But we do that with the right and left. Oh, it's the liberals. Oh, it's the conservatives. But guess what? When you really get down to it, it humanized him, right? And I will say, there were a lot of things about our conversations that still let me believe that the narrative about him is not that far off base. However, I am always going to want to give someone the same benefit of the doubt to prove who they are or to continue to grow and develop no matter how old we are, that I would like to be given to me. So yeah, it's kind of wild.
Yeah. I mean, it's I think it just illustrates, again, it's like we can have these differing beliefs, but let's be thoughtful about what we're saying. Yep. And I do want to like just come back to this point that you made, because I think it's so important. And I think this is what's happening in America. You said something about, we know what the truth is. The truth is ringing true. And things that aren't truth are no longer just going to be gaslit and bought, right? Yes. We're like, no, that's not true. And I'm not willing to believe you just because you're celebrity, just because
I was going to say to this whole celebrity endorsement thing, just because of this, right? It really comes down to truth. Sorry, I'm cutting you off. So when I went to see RFK, he was with Tucker Carlson, and Tucker was talking about this idea of truth. And he said something so fascinating. He said this whole idea of, misinformation got to be this word that was used during COVID. And, we were silenced a ton. I'm sure if you were online then, you definitely did. We had to put like an X in place of a thing, and you couldn't say shot. And, because it was misinformation. And Tucker said something that was so true. He said, misinformation isn't even a category. Misinformation, something is either true or it is not true. And he's like, and it's hard because how do you know? Well, Fox News is telling us the truth. Well, are they? Is MSNBC or is online? What about this? Are you going to go all the way to Alex Jones? And he said, you know it when you hear it. And I was like, oh, and the Bible talks about that too. There's a verse, I think it's in Romans, that says, I'm not going to get it right, but it talks about like, because of the beauty of creation and everything that's been made visible, that man can see that all men are without excuse, because you just kind of know it. Now, do you keep that veil in front of your eyes, or will you really accept it? But you're absolutely right. There's just truth, and you just kind of know it when you hear it. And therefore you kind of know it when it's something that's not true. So that's what I want to go. I don't want to be right. I don't want to be left. I want to be Republican. I want to be red. I want to be blue. I want to align with truth, right? From Jesus all the way down to my physical body and my children and everything. But it's like, it's not what a celebrity says. It's what's actually true.
Yeah, I think the fascinating thing is that the poisons, the fluoride, the geophosphate, the red 40, all of that stuff is designed to put us in a place and a state where we can't discern truth. That's the purpose for it. It has numbed us. And and it's so wild, because it's like, as I see these women, these crunchy homesteader homeschooling mamas that start to pull themselves out of the system and start to pull themselves out of the consumption of the toxins, what happens? They actually begin to be able to discern truth.
Yes, right. Because that numbs our physical senses, right? And then the God of this age and Satan has blinded the hearts and the spiritual side. And so there's this blinding. And you're absolutely right. The fluoride, what my friend Julie said, it calcifies your pineal gland or whatever. It really does it can be overwhelming if you think about it. Like, they're just really out to get us, except we can step out of it and say, hey, you're on the Truman Show. Remember that movie, right? And you're in that, like, I'm out. I see this is this game that you're playing. And guess what? If you want to do it, I mean, I would love all you not, but for me and my family, we're not playing that game anymore. I'm going to go, live in the country. And I haven't gotten to the part where I wear a bonnet and a skirt and stuff like that, but maybe I'll get there. But I can think for myself and think clearly.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay. So let's transition into your weight loss journey. Tell me about what started this, what inspired it. I mean, I've lost 40 something pounds. You've lost,
which is a lot.
Right. Yeah, but you've lost over 150. Like, tell me the story and how you got there. And then I want to hear more about how you're helping other women in that journey as well.
And the interesting thing is, Leah, all these things align, right? It does have to do with empowering ourselves to make choices, and what happens when we give that power to someone else versus what happens when we, take that ourselves. So I grew up, as I already said, kind of crunchy, and I ate pretty healthy. And then I had the first baby, did the whole not circumcising, not a year later, and then another baby a year after that. She was 15 weeks pregnant when we got pregnant with her brother. I breastfed. My body was just like ready to go. And then a year later had her brother. So I had 5 babies in 5 years. People would really ask me, like at church, ladies would say, you know what causes that? And I would make them blush. I'd be like, yep. And we sure do like it. And they'd be like, oh my gosh. I'm like, really? Yes. But you know what happens in pregnancy? You gain weight, right? So I had these 5 babies in 5 years, and I only gained about 20, 25 pounds with each baby, which isn't bad unless you have 5. So at the end of the day, here I am, this healthy mom who wasn't vaccinating her kids and who knew about, we're eating lentils for dinner, and I'm well over 100 pounds overweight because I poured myself into taking care of my kids. I ate whatever I wanted because I thought, I'm just trying to survive till bedtime or survive till the next baby's born or survive this midnight breastfeeding thing, right? And then I became a slave to a lot of what culture told me I should do. We'll swing through Starbucks. We'll swing through McDonald's. I guarantee you I was addicted to McDonald's Diet Coke. And I did not take great care of my body. And there's there's a lot of components to my health journey, but I will tell you the biggest factor was the decision that I made that I was going to take control, right, of my own health, just like I had made good decisions for my kids. Because here's what happened. I had a kidney stone, and I do have a kidney condition that causes me to make kidney stones. So I ended up going septic after a kidney procedure, just kind of randomly. And I got, I was in the ICU. I was very, very, very sick. My blood sugar was super high because I was real sick. They had to, give me epinephrine, and they were telling me, if you don't make it, do you want us to bring you back to life? Do you want us? And I'm like, I am 40 years old. Yes, bring me back to life. So I'm laying in the ICU, and I was 281 pounds. I know, because that's when I was weighing. You had to get weight. I think they had to, I don't know what they had to weigh me on. I was a big girl. And that first overnight, I was in a lot of pain just because being septic, you can die from that. It did not feel good. My bones hurt. And I would say to my nurse, I just had a, one-on-one ICU nurse. I said, I really don't feel good. And he said to me, yeah, you're really, really sick. And I knew what he meant. And I never I was always conscious. So I called my mom, and she came and she sat with me. And I remember just laying on my side and thinking to myself, I could die. And I don't think if I was healthy and not eating McDonald's or drinking Diet Coke and didn't weigh 280 pounds, I probably still would have gotten a kidney stone. Maybe I still would have gone septic. I don't know. But I decided right then and there, shame on me for not doing everything that I could. And I thought to myself, those 5 kids I don't have the right to do this to their mother. I will be better for them. So it all goes back again to that Maha moment of being moms. I actually chose to get healthy for them. And it's what did I do? Stopped eating crap and food that wasn't food and things that weren't good for me, and started eating food that was real food and things that were good for me. Started drinking water instead of Diet Coke. And then at first you do it for them, and then it's like, I feel better. I look better. I can fit into jeans. I can, go all the way to, I lost 154 pounds. I know all of y'all are trying to do that math if you're in the high 120s now, which is just insane. And it's not about the number, because here's what it is. It is about exactly what we've been talking about. What is true? I am valuable. My body is going to run best on natural foods. My body, when I'm tired, wants to rest. When I'm thirsty, it wants water. I can do hard things. Oh, Thanksgiving is coming up. There's going to be pie. Okay, great. I'll have one piece. It's just a total shift of saying, I am worth it. And it hasn't been easy, but I've been maintaining now for years. But I do. I look and feel like a different person. And then, to your lead in, now one of the things I do is help other women unleash their potential. Not everyone needs to lose 154. Some need to lose 40. Some need to lose 8. I have girls who need to gain weight. It's not even really about the number. It's how it manifests itself in each woman to be the best us. And if we're a mom, for our kids, but for ourselves. And then as you get older, I'm 47, right? Perimenopause is a thing, and that can be extra challenging too. And so I'm learning to navigate that and how I need to compensate by eating different things that I wasn't able to eat when I was able to eat when I was 30 and not put on, and I have to adjust. And it's learning and growing and being patient with my body, but also not accepting a false narrative that once you get old, you have to be fat and not feel good, and not accepting the lie from, pharma and the food companies and the government that says, you deserve a break today, right? No, I deserve to treat myself away. So that's kind of my way in a nutshell.
That's amazing. So what I definitely want to like have this conversation about perimenopause, and, you know, we need to talk about more. And again, from a health perspective, there are kind of two schools of thought. It's either like slap people on hormones, whether those are bioidentical or synthetic, right? It's like put women on hormones, but we're not really addressing like what are the root causes of these symptoms. So I'm interested to know, like, have you started like, and how are you navigating? Tell us like, what do you eat and what's your workout routine?
All
that was
great questions. It was a lot of questions. So of all my female parts, I don't have very many left. No uterus, and I only have one ovary. So therefore, I'm not able to tell as clearly, right, if I were still having a period, where I'm at. But you can tell with other symptoms, right? And so I've definitely started with having some sweats at night, and, you know, memory, and it's the blood work is showing it's about that time for me. And I also coach women who are going through late 30s into their 40s, late 40s, early 50s, who know exactly when they get into, you know, perimenopause and menopause. And I will say this about, you know, what I eat and what I'm finding as far as the two avenues, right? Either you address it with, or what's the alternative? If I could crystallize all of it down into one thing, it really comes down to blood sugar. 1 in 3 Americans are pre-diabetic. I mean, so many conditions really come down to the way that our pancreas has been overworked after all these years of eating and then dumping insulin, and then we try to lower the blood sugar with that insulin, and then we try to raise it when we eat, and we're just in these crazy spikes. It causes diabetes. Gosh, I mean, PCOS. You guys, so many conditions, especially female ones that we deal with as we start to enter and go through menopause, can really be addressed by watching our blood sugar. And so what does that mean? I was never diabetic. I don't even know that I'm pre-diabetic. My A1C was great. But the older we get, especially for women, we have a harder time processing sugar, white flour, simple carbohydrates, because as we eat them, our blood sugar goes up. Our pancreas creates insulin to try to lower it. But as we become insulin resistant, which is early diabetes, it just has a whole host of medical consequences for us, as well as weight loss. You look at the GLP-1 shot that everyone's doing, not everyone, a lot of people are doing, and that is really addressing blood sugar levels as well. So how I eat and how I coach most of my women to eat, it's not a one size fits all thing, because I've got girls who are vegans and some who are, you know, can't do dairy or whatever, but I really stick with, I completely avoid alcohol, sugar, white flour, unless I'm not avoiding it. We can say it matters with times and not what you just do sometimes. I'm going to put down some white rolls when I get to Atlanta for Thanksgiving. There's some rolls there, right? But I, for the most part, avoid that because those have a very high glycemic index. And so they're going to just spike your blood sugar. I eat tons and tons and tons of protein. You know, MCT oil, heavy whipping cream, bacon, beef, chicken. I'll make egg whites. I do so much protein, and our bodies need protein as we get older as well to maintain muscle. And I'm not afraid of healthy fats. And then I do a ton of fruit and veggies. I don't love fruits. I'm an O positive blood type. We could get off on a tangent about that. We like savory, salty more than we like sweets. But I do a ton of veggies because fiber is also super important. And then movement. I'm not a big like workout gym girl. I love to try to move after a meal. That's the best time for your blood sugar. If you can get yourself moving to keep it from spiking. My kids keep me active. I do like to ride bike, hike, and I feel like I'm like a grandma at the gym with like the little things. And I'm not trying to necessarily, I don't want to be bulky. I want to keep the muscle that I have, but really it comes down to high protein, healthy fats, not being afraid of it. And I ain't afraid of salt. You know, don't blame salt for what sugar actually caused. Sugar, white flour, truly, along with all the toxins that they've added to our food, you know, the more processed something is, the more toxic it is to our body. So I eat food in its closest form to how it was when God made it. And that's kind of the, you know, how I would encapsulate, you know, how I eat and why that's important for women in our 40s and 50s.
Yeah, I have been radical health journey over the last year and a half. I've lost these 40 pounds, and I stopped drinking alcohol entirely.
Okay.
Yep. The first thing that I did. And then, you know, have gone on to do so much research around how alcohol actually, and I really truly believe that any woman over 35, if they understood even what one drink does in the body, would never touch alcohol again. And so I, you know, completely eliminated alcohol. And then I've been carnivore for the last.
I didn't even know that. Yep. See, I do quite a few veggies, but I coach a lot of carnivore girls. It's great, right? I mean, it is radical what it can do. So what tells
I had such a overload. I have massive histamine issues in my body, chronic inflammation, and I had also an oxalate and deuterium overload, and then got mold toxicity. And so that on top of it, like I had to cut everything out because the mold feeds on the deuterium and the oxalates and the, you know, even the carbohydrates from the plants. And so I just felt so dramatically different when I cut everything out. Like that was my, you know, that has been my journey. And so I'm about 90% now. I do eat some fruit. And I'm a salty, savory gal as well. But I'm loving my journey so far. And I love just hearing what women are doing, because again, what works for me doesn't work for everyone.
Exactly.
We all are individuals. But I think this issue of insulin resistance is so powerful. And I'd love to actually just ask you a follow-up question on this, because obviously, you know, we are seeing people taking these pharmaceutical, big pharma doses of GLP-1s. Okay. And so that's I'm not going to even say the names because we'd like to keep this on YouTube and all the places, but the weight loss shots that all these people, all these celebrities are getting, and a lot of people in America are getting, they're GLP-1 inhibitors, but they're GLP-1 agonists, activators, in incredibly high, dangerous doses, essentially. What's your position on microdosing compounded GLP-1s?
You know what? That's fascinating. I haven't even heard about that. I will say that the company that I am a distributor with, they have a GLP agonist that's a natural product instead of being synthetic and a pharmaceutical. So I wouldn't say I would be against the concept of it. I haven't ever even heard of microdosing. I will say my knee-jerk reaction is always to be like, if it's a pharmaceutical, if it's made by, you know, it's just, I want to teach our bodies through how we treat it and how we feed it to have the correct response that our body ought to have. And I think a lot of that can be called, you know, by dealing with blood sugar. And to your point, right, the girls I have strictly on carnivore, I will have girls lose 12 to 13 pounds in 2 days because they're just inflamed. Their legs just get to normal size. Or even, do you know, tell me about what you know about that. Is that
so compounding pharmacies. So,
well, I do know I do know I'm familiar with that concept. I just never thought of doing it with a GLP-1 agonist.
Yeah. So there are certain peptides, and in fact, like Big Pharma is coming after the compounding pharmacies and actually removing their ability to titrate and compound these peptides because they're trademarking.
Well, of course. Don't know why.
So the FDA is removing approval on some of these things right now, but there's new ones coming out. But this is quite big in the longevity space, in the peptide space, right? Where we're actually, and they're not actually synthetic or biostimulators. So they are actually stimulating your own bodies
to create more to increase your GLP-1.
So it's an agonist, right? And so I did a little bit of this a while ago, but my methylation pathways, I have the MTHFR gene mutation.
Oh, so okay.
I am still like in a place of like really getting my methylation pathways functioning properly. And I was on a peptide protocol and it was too much. And my methylation pathways were not like working properly. So I had to stop. And I've since gone in and like, I'm in a much better functioning place in relation to those methylation pathways right now. So I am going to actually begin in January microdosing some GLP-1 for a couple of reasons. One, because there is a lot of science and evidence right now around exactly what you were speaking about, which is why I asked you, which is the insulin factor with perimenopause and menopause. And that a lot of the symptoms that we're experiencing has to do with insulin resistance. And so when we microdose GLP-1 agonists and we're getting doses of this in our body, and it's really managing, it manages all of it, and it's keeping insulin resistance at bay. And so, it's just something that personally,
it's fascinating. Like I said, because my company has an agonist as well, but it's just kind of meant to do the same thing. Just give your body that boost to start making it, because GLP-1 is a hormone that our body naturally creates. I mean, it itself is good. It's God made it, gave it to our bodies. You're right. I think menopause approaching, when it collides then with that insulin resistance and this decreased GLP-1 production, perimenopause gets blamed for a lot of it, when, yeah, we're still going to go through menopause. We can mitigate a lot of it by addressing these things right through diet, and whether it be supplementation, microdosing, or whatnot, of the real issue that's going on, right? Driving down, I drove 3 hours to get here to Minneapolis today. I'm flying tomorrow morning from the airport, and my fuel light came on because it was time to get more fuel. Well, you know what I could have done to make that fuel light go off? Well, I could have just taken a piece of black duct tape and stuck it over there so that I wouldn't see it anymore. There, fuel light's off. But guess what would have happened in 20 miles? I would have run out of gas. The fuel light actually isn't just the light isn't the problem. It's telling you that the tank is almost empty. So what I actually did was I went to the gas station and I fueled up. Well, our body, when we have trouble losing weight and we're having these severe menopause, perimenopause symptoms, and our blood sugar is high, and whatever it is, we have stubborn weight around our midsection. That's actually a light. And so to just cover it up temporarily with something like these massive doses of pharmaceuticals or whatever it is, covering it up. But if you don't get to the actual core of it in 20 miles, right? And so for us, you said the word longevity. That's the name of this. Here we are, right? The longevity lights, like that should be at the forefront of our minds, rather than duct taping over these symptoms, is addressing them where they started.
Yeah. And are you doing anything in relation to personally or with your clients around circadian rhythms, morning, afternoon, and evening sun, EMF blocking, things like that? Are any of those things that you personally practice or that you use with your clients?
Great question. EMF blocking, not. I know some of my girlfriends have been talking about that lately. Definitely with circadian rhythms, especially because I travel so much, right? And even like your husband is gone right now. The more you travel, I watched Joe Rogan talk about this a couple of years ago about an eating pattern and following the sun pattern to help with jet lag. But the same applies here. And here we are now with where we are in the United States. With daylight savings, the sun's going down at 4:30. So important to see and feel the sun, right? And also be aware of when your body's when it's most capable. Everyone has their own peak performance time. Sometimes people's are in the morning, sometimes they're in the afternoon, but also grounding, right? And just getting our feet right on the ground, feeling the sun. I mean, it was easier to do when I lived in Hawaii because it was just easier, now it's cold and I'm wearing all sorts of snow pants. But I think it's important. But I definitely do red light therapy, and I have a Himalayan salt cave that I go to and just sit in it and just let it detox me and breathe it, especially if I feel like something's coming on. So, but EMF blocking, I haven't gotten super duper into that. A couple of my friends have talked about it with their devices and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think this is just all the stuff that's coming down the track, and it's going to be really interesting to see like where we go from this health longevity perspective, especially as this new cabinet comes in and the questions are starting to be raised, and we really do start to look at what are the environmental factors that are leading to this chronic illness in America. So this was so amazing. Like I can't even believe like this conversation flowed so well. I've had such a great time. I'm for sure going to have you back. I would love to just talk more about these topics. I'm grateful for you being here and sharing your journey and your thoughts and all your feelings on all of these topics that we talked about today.
Well, thank you for your friendship, Leah, but also for getting to the place, right, where you felt empowered enough to share how you feel, come hell or high water. And I get it with having a business. And there's times I wonder if I'm, burning bridges. But I think that the community and the solidarity and the empowerment that we stand to give each other as women is more powerful than anything that we would lose by people saying, she's too much this or that. You know what? I'm not for everyone, but I'm going to do me. I love that you do you, and everyone who's watching either live or recorded for joining us. This was so fun, but yes, we've just scratched. Until next time.
And where can everyone find you on social media?
Really, Instagram is probably the easiest way to connect with me. McMama77 and last name is McKinney. My friends are Maisie, Colin, and Kieran. So it was this cute little thing, but then I had 2 more kids, so that threw the whole letter thing out of the water. But 77, Jennifer McKinney, Leah, who's this? And they were talking to me, so I think they'll be following you too. But hey, there's room at the top, right? When we see the truth, we want to help people to see it themselves so that it empowers them the way that God intended it to.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the show notes, we will, if you are interested in her high performance coaching, like certainly reach out to her. I know that she will be absolutely welcoming to you. Thank you so much for being here. Have a beautiful and blessed rest of your evening in Minneapolis. And for everyone else, go out and make it a blessed and beautiful day, whether you are here watching live with us or you are on the replay. Till next time.
Love you, girl. Bye, guys.
Ciao, ciao.